Okay, good evening, everyone. It's Monday, October 18th. This is our regular council meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. And first item on the agenda is the opportunity to announce any conflict of interest. Of course, you can mention anything along the way as something comes to mind at any point of discussion. So then we have minutes from the meeting, the 2 September meetings, which you received by email, meetings on the 13th and the 27th of September. I trust you've had a chance to look them over.
I move the acceptance of the minutes
Thank you,
as
Sheila.
circulated.
Would there be a seconder?
I'll second that.
I heard a growl. We'll call that
Yeah.
Sheldon.
It was.
Any discussion on that motion? Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes from the 2 September meetings, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Carried. All right, delegations, maybe no delegations. And so we're on to unfinished business projects update. This is the fun part, all the activities in the town. So Dan, start talking us through all this stuff.
Okay, the plow truck I did receive, I think I gave council an update last time we talked about a computer chip. I did get another email again late last week that we are still waiting on a computer chip for the new truck. And we don't have a delivery date yet on that. So that's still up in the air. We are getting, of course, the existing plow trucks all being prepped for this season. So hopefully we'll take delivery of that, fingers crossed, early in the new year. If everything went well and we got the truck, it's 8 weeks to do the fit up on it once the company receives the truck. So if we don't get the truck till mid-November, we won't have it till mid-January, give or take, in theory. So hopefully that truck will arrive sooner rather than later. The storm drain repair, this was done on the down by Stewart's Transfer Trucking Company. There was a storm drain there that we had some issues with. It collapsed on the riverbank, so we repaired that. The fellows finished that up last week. We've got to go back in the spring and do the topsoil work. And that's the same thing with the retaining wall at the police by the RCMP station. We still need to do some topsoil work there in the spring. And for this fall, we still need to do the patching of the paving along the base of it. But that'll be done when we have the company in to do the paving of the industrial park streets that we're getting done. So when we get that, we'll get those all patched up and around the EV charger and the per side. The sand and salt storage, we've got, I guess, one container is installed. We should have the other one, and we'll have the paving done for that when the company's here also for the area where we're going to store the sand and salt. And after that, the building is supposed to be here by December is what I'm told. So hopefully everything will go well on that. And of course, all of our seasonal prep that we're working on for getting the docks away and the benches and all that stuff that we do and the arena start up and all of our normal seasonal stuff the fellows been working hard at. So it's been a great fall for getting stuff done, and hopefully we'll get another few weeks of good weather before we get a whole lot of snow. But other than that, things seem to be going well. If anybody has any questions on any of those.
Any comments or questions on any of those projects? Okay, if not, we'll go on to 6B, the strategic planning session this weekend, where we get to actually meet in person and talk about things. Go ahead, Dan, tell us what you've got lined up there with the staff.
Oh, okay, well, typically how we've done these in the past, we do the overview, sort of the agenda for the session. We do an overview of the process, just to make sure everybody understands what we're trying to accomplish during the weekend. So we do review council's mission statement and vision statement and our values, and every council in the past has sort of tweaked those and updated the wording to some areas that they want to put focus on. Then we do a quick overview of all the municipal services and current projects. And then we get into a real good discussion about current issues facing the community. And now we have sent a thing out through the newsletter, I believe last week, where we're sort of asking people to send in their comments on what they feel are the key issues that are facing the community that council should be considering to address. So we'll have some feedback there, some engagement with the community on that to provide. And then typically how we've done these in the past, we sort of divide the strategic plan up into different sections, or we call them pillars. And then we sort of set a goal for each one. So if one of the pillars is, for example, if it could be tourism, for example, if we want to increase tourism by a certain percent, if we have a clear goal on that, then we brainstorm, I guess, ideas around, well, what are options to improve tourism in the community? And then after we brainstorm possible solutions, say if we come up with 10, then council members each individually rank them from 1 to 10, and then we sort of come up with the top priorities for council to pursue. And then after that, we talk about the implementation process, and then if we're fortunate to have enough time at the end, if we end up with any, then we get into some more detailed discussion on projects and budget discussion. And I'm assuming this year, one of the issues for council to decide, are we doing a 2-year strategic plan? Or are we doing a 4-year strategic plan? So I guess that'll be one of the issues that council has to wrestle with. And of course, there's a whole bunch of underlying issues with local government reform. The council needs to think through the different options that are available and different ways it could go, especially around the new size of the community. Does council have a preference on that? If we feel that we have an option, how proactive do we want to be on going out and fostering partnerships early? There's a whole bunch of issues, and how do we protect our utilities, the water utility and the light utility, and how do we make sure that through any restructuring that those two utilities are well protected and insulated and things. So there's a whole bunch of interesting issues, and the strategic plan is always great, because part of the problem that we run into the past, and a lot of communities do, is that if council doesn't have a clear strategic plan on what they want to achieve, then all of a sudden you're partway through the term, and all of a sudden somebody one night comes with an idea of, oh, we should be doing this, and the next thing you know, you're off working on that, and you're not staying focused on the big picture items that you want to achieve. So it's been really beneficial for our community, especially when you look back last year at all the accomplishments that the previous council did off their strategic plan. So it'd be, I guess it's one of those things, you plan for success type thing. So hopefully that'll be the case again this year. So
I know that although this was a really, really useful session at the beginning of 2016, I didn't really understand how much it did direct us until about the second half of our term, where I began to see that we were actually really making progress on particular things that we had chosen as the priorities. And so I'm highly motivated about this session this time, and even figuring out the length of our time frame is going to be a funny thing this time. So just before we get into the logistics, I'll just see if there's anybody on the council who wants to make a comment or ask a question about what we're going to be doing.
Just a quick question. Are we supposed to come prepared, or is it going to be full on discussion the whole time?
I don't think you have to. I think you come with everything that you know right now, and be really willing to listen and talk. But I don't think you have to read anything too much in advance. I don't recall doing a lot of prep. Dan, what do you think about preparation? That's a great question.
No, it's great. And one of the main reasons we do these too is to sort of get council's vision for what you people see, what you'd like to see in the community. And it's more or less a brainstorming session where we typically split up into 2 or 3 groups and have table discussions, and it's about coming with great ideas and then listening to other people's ideas, and then I guess as a group collectively try to sort them out and pick the best ones that council wants to pursue. So yeah, there's not a lot of study time to it, but I'll certainly get everybody a copy of the presentation and all that stuff prior to, just so people can be aware of the actual agenda and how it's going to roll out. But it's normally been really good discussion and things like that has won the day, so to speak.
And now it does begin on Friday and it goes all the way till Sunday. So Dan, do you want to talk about the logistics?
Yeah, typically what we've done with these, the Friday night, we've done it a couple different ways. We've done either a supper at say 5 o'clock or 5:30 for people to meet, and the people that can make it come to the supper. The session would typically go from whatever time, 7 till 9 or 9:30 on Friday night. We'd meet for breakfast early in the morning on Saturday, and then go till 5 o'clock or so Friday or Saturday night, and then have a dinner, and then the next morning breakfast, and we try to finish up by noon, and so that way there are people can get on the road by noon.
So you're just working out the details of which venue this will be at. There's been some questions in the air about where we're allowed to go and so on, but you'll be communicating with that with the council?
Yeah, like right now we're planned on we have the Crown booked in the Lord Beaverbrook booked for this now currently, depending on what the status of the government regulations are this week, if they change or not, or what, however that could pan out. If it changes that the government doesn't want us to travel for work outside our zone, so to speak, then we may end up doing something within our own little circuit zone, so to speak. But we'll, I guess, see how that rolls out with the province this week.
There are definitely advantages of everybody being in the one spot, kind of bubbled together for not quite 48 hours, but really working through issues and being able to follow up on threads of ideas and so on. So I'll just see again if anybody wants to make any comment or question about that. Okay, so everybody should be thinking to arrive if possible by about 5, but we're not, no, we're planning that we'll be arriving at the Crown Plaza at 5-ish or something like that for the supper, but then the session in the evening would be at 7 approximately start time. And there will be staff there as well and lots of documents and information. So all the parts, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday are all important parts of this weekend. Okay, anything else you want to remind us of or say about that, Dan, before we move on?
No, nothing else.
Okay, we'll go on then to item 7 on the agenda. A letter from 2 of our ministers. Okay, Dan, why don't you talk about this?
Yeah, the ministers were working late last Friday night. This came around, I think, 8:30 Friday night, where they're basically asking municipalities for, I guess, 3 or 4 things. One of the questions they'd like is they're asking municipalities to align our workforce vaccination policies with those adopted by the provincial and federal governments. As council knows, that's something that we worked on at the last meeting, and I have the policy later on for the agenda. So the province, I guess, is originally they didn't make it mandatory for municipalities to follow them, but now they're asking municipalities to align with their policies. And then they've also included a map, which I've got on the next slide, that highlights the vaccination rates by region. And the other ask in this, or they would like us to support whatever we can to encourage people to get vaccinated and work with the various government departments. So that's the basic gist of that. As you can see from the map here, there's different levels of vaccination rates in the province. We're not in the lowest region, but we're not in the highest either.
We're not seeing that map right now, Dan. We're looking at the letters.
All right.
There we are.
Yeah. Yeah, so as you can see from that, we're not losing the race, we're not winning it, we're just middle of the pack type thing.
So I think we'll talk more about the policy when we get to that motion. Maybe we'll talk about whether we want to revise it or whatever. Although, I'm just wondering about the second request that they have, which is to promote vaccinations in the community. And I wonder what methods they might be hoping that we would use. Like, what kinds of things do they want us to do? We've been certainly putting out a strong pro-vax message in our newsletter and in the mayor's message. And I haven't heard any or seen any counselors being anti-vax on social media. Like, we don't really set up the clinics or anything like that. Do you know, Dan, what specific thing they're thinking that municipalities could be doing that we're not already doing?
Yeah, not a whole lot. I think there's sort of a few things. They're trying to help out, or they're asking municipalities to help out now with the rapid testing and to get information out there on that side of the ledger. But the actual vaccinations, from a call, I believe, Maribel, you and I are both on this week, they were talking about trying to get information from communities on what our perspectives are on people not wanting to get the vaccine. What are the barriers to it and how can they address it? Or how can we get information out to those people that are anti-vax or that are unsure, the ones that may be still on the fence, that how can we get information to them that might help them win the day. But one of the issues that was brought up in that call and been in other discussions is there seems to be a lot of information in different agencies, and it's hard to keep track of what the most current stats are for vaccines or information and things like that. So it's a big challenge, but we can certainly help whatever information the province wants us to push out. We can certainly, through our local marketing, we can certainly push it out.
And I think we've been doing that quite actively. I'll just ask the rest of the counselors about what suggestions you might have for what else we could do. Sheila, I see you have a hand up.
Yeah. I sent a message to Horizon Health and Department of different departments last week, because my concern was even we would only have one clinic a month for vaccines, and they would be by appointment only. And people who didn't have internet access or that would call and they would wait up to 3 hours online. So I started making appointments for people, and I did some more today. And if you came, they were not walk-in. It was not walk-in till a month ago. Up to that time, you must have an appointment, and people were there from Woodstock and Heartland and everywhere. And people from local would walk up and they couldn't get an appointment. So they've now changed it so there can be walk-ins. And the first day that they had walk-ins, they did well over 500 people that day. And this last one was between 300 and 400. What does that tell you? Make it so they can walk in and they'll happen. Testing was only available in February and March, and that was by appointment only. It couldn't be a drive up to have it done. And the Sunday that they had it at the church, and we took that Sunday, they worked the full day. It was by appointment only. You couldn't just come by and get one of those. The testing, so it was only available during this big time. It was only available one day on a Sunday and one Monday, and both of them were by appointments only. So I asked for the rapid tests and things to be coming, and they did do those on Saturday, but they didn't have enough and they ran out, and there's no plan right now to have more rapid tests available. So I tried to point out the issue that we have people who have lack of transportation to go to Woodstock or Heartland to get the testing done or get their vaccination. And some might have a vehicle, but one person has to use it to go to work and it doesn't work for them. So they are better now. There's a clinic, another one at the end of the month, and there's 2 already booked in November. And I'm booking people in who had their first one on October the 1st. I'm booking them in for the 29th if I get a chance. Today there were still openings there, and I've been booking people in. If they call, I just help them get an appointment.
Okay, so so the testing, definitely they're changing they're adjusting their policies on testing, and we did have the rapid test distribution on Saturday, and I've been on lots of phone calls and emails about trying to improve the testing opportunities here. In terms of the vaccination, so it's good, Sheila, that you're advocating for more walk-in and more days and so on. In the meeting that I was in last week, that Dan was in too, it was the resiliency committee, which isn't a committee that I've been actively involved in. It's a regional thing. And they were looking to get from people in this part of New Brunswick names of key influencers, people that they thought they could specifically target. And they have some pretty high level civil servants, provincial civil servants who are kind of from up this way, like from New Denmark, Grand Falls, this kind of thing. And they were it sounds like they were going to be maybe working the phones and maybe making some appointments to see some people in person in the circuit breaker zones to see about communicating a more clear message and putting the push on encouraging people to vaccinate. So, I mean, there were some remarks made about church leaders, certain church leaders that might benefit from a consultation. And I don't know if we necessarily want to be trotting out names in a public recorded meeting of who we think might be an influencer, but that was something that they specifically were looking for last week. Who are the key people that the public health and other key government officials could talk to help convince people to get vaccinated?
That would explain the phone call I got today from somebody at the government. And I have an appointment at 10 o'clock on Wednesday morning to talk to them about influencing people vaccination wise and stuff like that. So that would explain that phone call.
Yeah, they're targeting the wrong church, for goodness sake. But anyway, but yeah, that might be something. That might be. I didn't give your name, Sheila, by the way, but
somebody did.
Yeah. So I'm just I'll just leave that part about the influencers out there, and then counselors, if you can think of key people that would be good for these civil servants to have a conversation with, maybe send Dan an email or send me an email, and we can get it to the people who were asking for those names. Can you think, counselors, of other things that the municipality should be doing or could be doing without, taking on somebody else's responsibilities exactly, but that we could be doing to encourage higher vax rates in our community?
We already did it in one area when we said that the arena must have a double vaccination to attend. And the large percentage of the ones that come, the last few vaccination clinics, were bitterly complaining that they had to do it to get to watch hockey or things like that with their kids. But they were there and they got their first one. And I booked a couple people today for their second one. So they'll get it by the 29th of October. So they'll be official for hockey. So we've already done something by that.
Yeah, and that's putting teeth behind our friendly reminder to get vaccinated. It's saying, and by the way, it's going to be a little rougher to do the fun things in this town without having a vaccination. Any other thoughts on things the municipality could do? Dan, I suppose the staff will be having a bit of a brainstorm about anything else in the social media way, or we're pretty well doing, I would say, most of what we have the ability to do.
Yeah, it's tough now because we're down to that final percent of people that just don't want to get vaccinated. So how do you convince people that don't want something that they need something? And to me, it's more of a one-on-one process, perhaps, than the other. And what seems to work, unfortunately, I mentioned on the call last week, the stick seems to work better than anything else. But
in terms of conversations, though, like, I do think that as people are getting more polarized on this, we definitely want to be demonstrating or reminding people that trying to show respect for people, whatever their reasons are for not getting vaccinated. We certainly might have different ways of looking at things, but the more people dig in just because they feel like they're not being respected, that's not going to help. But anyways, I do not know the secrets for convincing somebody to get vaccinated. And if any of us did know the trick, we would have shared it by now. Okay, so I guess there's nothing else we need to say right now about this, because we'll talk more about our policy when we get to the motion, I think, because we'll consider maybe amending the policy or taking it as we've got it. Anything else anybody wants to say about this? Okay, so then we're going to go on to the municipal department report, item 8 on the agenda. Okay, Dan, point us to some highlights here.
Yeah, I guess some of the highlights for different areas, the building permits, although the number of permits is down slightly, the value of permits this year is significantly higher than last year. And one good thing about this year's building permits, we've had 4 new residential dwellings in the community, which is nice. The solid waste tonnage is up, and I guess this is an issue that for council that we're going to have to try to get our head around at some point too, with the garbage collection and how we provide that service. And people don't seem to, our curbside waste collection seems to be going up from what people can see this year. And that's even over last year where we had higher numbers. Some communities have more restrictions, like say, for example, you're only allowed 1 can per home per week type thing. Some municipalities have that, where right now we have some people putting out maybe some construction materials that they're not supposed to be putting out with their weekly collection and things like that. So there's some issues around that. How do we get more recycling and less solid waste going in? So you can sort of see that the curbside recycling is down 5.6% this year, while the curbside is up, or sorry, the solid waste is up 8.2%. So we're sort of trending in opposite lines there for those two programs. Fortunately, the large recycle bin is way up this year. It wasn't getting dumped a lot last year during COVID without people going to the schools and things. So now it's good that that's getting used again. But other than that, the energy consumption, of course, is down significantly at the rink because of the lack of use last year. The gym memberships are way up, of course, than the year before. And the civic center visits are obviously down. Power consumption in the community, the year to date, our customers have used 2.5% less energy year to date. The light power outages up a little bit from last year. We've only had 5 all year. The water consumption at the wells is down after the guys were able to fix the leak over in Perth. So it's great to see that number drop. And other than that, just the webpage visits are way up, of course. There's a lot going on with all of our media and social marketing and all that. So that's where we're at with the admin report. And it's the time of year where we're trying to get, as I mentioned earlier, all of our fall stuff done up and budget work and things like that for year end. Lots of exciting stuff going on in the community.
Any questions or comments about the municipal report here? What about that web page visits? I'm just thinking they're still visiting the old web page that has the new banner, but it's still not the
new fancy one. Yeah.
New one that we've been really excited about.
Yeah, I had a call in today. I was sort of hoping to get an update on that. I was hoping to be able to show it to council tonight, but I'll follow up again tomorrow with it just to see. If not, I was thinking if I have to, we'll drag the outreach production guys out of their home on the weekend to make sure they finish it while we're in Fredericton. But
where we're getting increased traffic, it would be nice to have a better website, I guess.
Yes.
Other councillors, comments or questions about that report? Jason?
Just wondering, Dan, if maybe at our next committee meeting, we could flesh out some of that solid waste stuff. And it's been has it been about a year since we've been collecting on our own?
Give or take, I believe, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe we just need to look at that again and like you said, flesh it out a bit more maybe, and it's probably a little bit more time spent on it than what we would spend here, but
Yeah, we
whether or
also,
not it was successful or if we need to change anything or not.
yeah, we have another community that's extremely interested in partnering with us on the collection too. So that's sort of a topic for, I guess, this weekend's discussion too.
Thank you for that question. Anyone else? Okie doke, then we'll go on then to the fire report.
Yeah, as you can see, the current calls were 8 last month, 96 year to date. So that's down significantly from last year, where we were down. We had 19 calls the current month, and year to date 110. So so it's still a busy year, above our normal. We have a lot more calls due to the type this year. As you can see, motor vehicle calls are up significantly from what we used to be in the old system, the old dispatch. So we're getting a lot of calls where we're called out, but we go to the scene. Like, I don't know what the percentage would be on those motor vehicle calls, but we may have only done work, say, at 10 of them, for example. So there's some increased calls there just through communication through the dispatch. But other than that, it's good to see the calls down so the fellows can spend a bit more time at home with their families.
Questions or comments from councilors? We have to mention that we've had a terrible loss to our fire department in our community in the last month with the death of Jeremy Goodine. And that is such a very sad thing. And certainly we send our sympathy out to the friends and family of this fine young person. And it's certainly a tragedy. Okay, let's move on then to the Human Bee update. Yes, let me grab my papers. So I just want to say a few things about the Union of Municipalities of New Brunswick AGM that happened on the weekend, the first weekend in October, the weekend before Thanksgiving. And I was delighted to see Deputy Mayor McPhail, who attended the entire AGM, and it was a really long one. It went till way in the afternoon on Sunday, but there was lively discussion on about 8 resolutions, which I'm going to talk about in a second. So it was a very, very good meeting. And so the Zone 6 that we're part of, which is Western New Brunswick, more or less from Nakawik up to us and Plaster Rock, the 2 directors are Ian Kitchen from Nakawik and me. And so we're going to try and be a little bit more active in terms of zone meetings in the next year. So every time there's a Board of Governors meeting, we're planning to have a zone meeting, and it's always by Zoom, just in advance of that, so we can know what people in our zone are thinking before we go to the big meeting. So you all would have received an email. I think, Dan, you would have forwarded that on maybe to the councilors, the ones that I sent. Oh, no, okay.
Yeah, it's posted in the SharePoint site.
That's
also.
right, it's in the SharePoint site, that's right. So there are the dates for the zone meetings are all listed there, and everybody, and I've mentioned this before, mayor or councilors are all welcome to attend the Union of Municipalities events. And as I mentioned before, a good half of the directors are councilors, not mayors. It's a really interesting way to get involved in municipal issues, all on a slightly bigger scale. There was a call that I think has now expired. It was supposed to be the 15th for anybody on a municipal council to sign up for a committee, a standing committee or an ad hoc committee for the Union of Municipalities. And so, yeah, I signed up for a couple, and I hope a few of you did too. And if you think maybe you might be interested in that, you could always go back and look at the email about committees, or I know there's a statement about it on the SharePoint. And if you want to be in something and the deadline looks to have passed, maybe we can squeeze you onto a committee. Anyways, I'm not setting up the committees, but I do think it's a useful thing. And I kind of wonder, anyways, it would have been useful to pay a little bit more attention to that earlier on too. I just want to talk a little bit about the resolution. So I think I may have spoken about some of the resolutions at the AGM at a previous meeting, but I just want to tell you, because these are now new things that the Union of Municipalities is going to push hard for with the provincial government. So that's mostly what the Union of Municipalities does. It does do an awful lot of other good training and workshops, and you'll see in the SharePoint there's a lot of sessions coming up, including a meeting with Minister Alain on municipal reform in a week from Thursday, I think. But so not only is there sharing of information and ideas and some training and so on, there's also points of advocacy. So there was a motion that was passed to work on policing, to partner, that UMNB partner with other municipal associations and with the provincial government to determine the most effective and efficient way to provide policing in the province and its municipalities. Policing is just going to be a huge engrossing issue across the province over the next few years, especially as the RCMP changes what they're about to do. So that motion was passed, and we talked about meeting or exceeding minimum policing standards, and I voted for that on behalf of this town. Grand Bay Westfield wanted to submit a motion about consulting to see if there's interest in establishing a working group about insurance to study the feasibility of establishing a municipal group liability insurance and property insurance program, and they have a long rationale, and I voted in favor of that. Healthcare came into the discussion again. So this was from Riverview, and there was a resolution passed to call on the provincial government and the health authorities to establish clinics in rural and underserviced areas of the province with a team that includes physicians, nurse practitioners, physio, dietitians, x-ray, etc., to take the stress off hospitals. And I voted for that, and that was passed. There was another motion about reviewing the services of Service New Brunswick outlets. Apparently, this came from Riverview. There are places in the Moncton, Riverview, Dieppe area where people have to travel quite a long way to get Service New Brunswick services. And so the resolution was just to make things more available and don't be asking everybody to go down online, because lots of people are not able to do things online. Then there was a motion about, this was a closer vote, and it was about banning recyclable and compostable materials at landfills. This was from the town of Sackville. It passed by a vote of 18-14, and I voted for it. So this is what it was finally resolved, that that UMNB petitioned the provincial government to ban recyclable and compostable materials at landfills across the province of New Brunswick. And the discussion was that that would be a tough thing, and illegal dumps will pop up, but we have to get things going somehow. Light as many candles on the recycling and composting instead of letting people just put everything in the garbage. Then there was a resolution that we petition Elections New Brunswick to allow for permanent residents to vote in municipal government elections. That passed. There was a vote petitioning that UMNB petition Elections New Brunswick to include Indigenous languages on municipal and provincial ballots. And I did ask whether this was a really important thing, if there aren't other really important ways for us to work on behalf of Indigenous people. But again, this is a small thing that has been recognized as being a thing of value. And so I voted in favor, and it was passed. There was one more motion about that UMNB petitioned the provincial government and the Department of Environment and Climate Change to ensure that a significant portion of the carbon tax revenue be dedicated to implement the commitments of the Climate Action Plan and be reinvested in the 9 climate change commitments directed towards municipalities. Of course, we'd like a lot of that money, not just some, but. So all these things were additional things, and there are already lots of standing resolutions. And I will just ask Tammy if you want to say anything about any of those resolutions or anything about the annual meeting that you attended.
I found it really informative. The only other one you didn't mention, I was just remembering about making the Truth and Reconciliation a stat holiday for New Brunswick as a province. And I thought that was really interesting because of the way that the system works. There were some that were trying to there was an issue about how it was presented because it was presented last moment. And anyway, they had to dig through the books to find out if it was actually could be a motion, and then it was passed. So they will be lobbying the government on that one, which I thought was kind of important.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, that was the last one, and the notes I have indicate that that was the one that was tacked on at the last minute. It was just sort of, it was an exception, and we had to make sure it was able to be passed and all that sort of thing. So yes, thank you for mentioning that. It was a good meeting, and I do encourage everybody on the council to drop in to his own meeting, or there's all these workshops. There's one on tendering and procurement. There's lots of good things that you can learn from and contribute your point of view to that are organized by UMNB. So I do encourage people to take an interest in those things. So I think that's all I'm going to say. I'll just see if anybody on the council wants to ask or make a comment. Okay, so then we're on to number 8D, Mayor and Council reports. And so I'm just going to run over a few little things that that were some of the things I did on that behalf of the village over the last month or so. There have been several briefings from different levels of government about COVID, and sometimes they're really informative and sometimes they're not. So there was one on the 15th of September. I attended the Zone 6 meeting on September 28th. And you can find minutes for that, I do believe, on the SharePoint. I've done a few different interviews with media, as you may have picked up, with Global News and CBC. There's been quite a lot of concern about maybe misinformation and certain groups of people. And so I talked to Global News about that. The UMNB Board of Directors and AGM. I've been involved in a little bit of conversation with some local people about the crosswalk question over on the Fort Road by the middle school. So I've been talking to Dan about what exactly are jurisdiction issues there and so on. So we will probably end up talking about safety and walking and all those sorts of things over the weekend when we're looking at major priorities. I did have a lengthy meeting on October 12th with the clerk Lois Stemmings of the village of Aroostook to talk to her about municipal reform. I did notice today that there was an article, I think it was online or maybe it was in the paper, that Minister Allen is saying publicly anyways that they are looking at school catchment areas as the way to organize new municipalities. So I was talking to Lois about how that would be and how possibly if we work together to look at things like housing and building relationships with Tobic First Nation and police and crime concerns and so on, possibly if we're working together, we might be able to make more headway and offer more options to people than just working in a tiny little community. I did say that we're not trying to grab a Aroostook. We're just looking at what's probably going to be happening and trying a way to make it, you know, to go into the future thinking that we're going to make things better for everybody. So that was a really great meeting. And as far as I know, there aren't representatives active on any committees for the two LSDs. So yeah, it was good to have a meeting with the Aroostook. And then there was this resiliency meeting that I attended on Friday where they were looking for tips from us on who are the power players so we could help them figure out who they can talk to about encouraging vaccination. And then I did 2 mayor's messages. I'm not planning to do a mayor's message every week for the time being, but when there's something to say, or if I can think of a new way to say one of the important things that needs to be said many, many times, I'll do a mayor's message. So I'll just invite now any of the councillors who have attended a significant event or been part of an important conversation on behalf of the village, does anybody want to report on anything that they have done in the last month? Sheila, go ahead.
Okay, I attended the library board meeting on the 14th of September. And then on the 15th, I went to that community roundtable, and that was a good opportunity to be sitting with the people from Aroostook during that time, and also a good opportunity to speak to the minister about concerns that we had. On the 28th of September, the Zone 6 meeting of UMNB. And October the 9th, the Planning Advisory. And I've had several people contacting me. One person came to see me. They were concerned about housing. And many of them are interested in selling their homes to families that want to come in, but they don't want to move out of the community. And so they can't sell it because there's really not affordable, reasonable housing for them, apartment wise or anything like that. So there were 2 or 3 different people who came and talked about it. So that is a concern for everyone.
Thank you, Sheila. Yeah, that's definitely something I'm hearing from other places too, and something we'll be talking about over on the weekend. Yes, Jason, go ahead.
I'll just say that I reached out to Ross Purley, the chief at Tolbic, knowing that we're putting the ice in again. Just reaching out to him about the flag raising, if he's still interested in that. So when he gets back to me, I'll let council know and see if we can work out a time and opportunity to be able to do that again, or not again, to be able to do it finally.
Good, thanks. I did get some words of appreciation from Chief Ross that we recognized September 30th. And I think that in the future, when things are more open and we can go to things, we might be able to do some, showing with our feet our support by attending an event or participating in a live event around that time. Any other counselors have anything they'd like to report? Sheila.
There was one other thing. I was asked twice this last couple of weeks, the EV chargers that are there when they'll be ready for use. And the other question was, how will they be able to access them, especially the ones by the Civic Center, because there's always people parked in those spaces. So that was the question they're asking.
That's called being iced. If you drive up to your charger and there's a gas guzzler there, you say that you were iced. You were I think it's internal combustion engined out of your parking spot. And that's a very bad thing. But Dan, how will we make sure that those spots are held open for people who want to charge their cars?
Yeah, that's a challenge in a lot of areas. We will have the spaces marked for that. In some jurisdictions, they're treating them as parking meters. For example, right now, to use a charging station, I believe the rates vary. Some of those ones, some municipalities are billing $1 an hour or $1.50 an hour, and they're sort of treating it as long as the actual connection is made to the vehicle, that's what the rate is to use it. So there is a thought in some jurisdictions is to have, for these people that aren't using them for the electric charging, that they should also have to pay the parking charge, is one option. So either use the parking meter to pay for your parking, or use the actual charging station and pay for your parking that way. So there are different options, but we'll try to mark them more clearly, and hopefully the people will be respectful and for the EV chargers, because I know at the Civic Center we have there'll be 4 parking spots there for the charging station, for the 2 stations. So hopefully people will be respectful, and hopefully in the next little while there will be enough cars there using them that it won't be an issue.
Dan, what did we decide? Can you refresh my memory on whether people will be paying for the electricity or not in our village?
Well, that's one of the things for council to sort of set the rate. Like, do we want to do something where it's for the first period of time that it's free? Some people have been some communities have been doing it as free. Some have been doing it like I mentioned, $1 an hour, $1.50 an hour for the charge. And obviously right now there's not a huge demand for the stations. It's more of a marketing thing to let people know that, look, there are charging stations at several locations in the community. So if you do have an electric vehicle, charging them shouldn't be an issue while you're in town doing your business. So I guess
So
at the end
For
of
the
the day,
time being, we're
council,
just gonna leave it as a gift from the light utility for the time being, just because the demand isn't that high just yet. That's kind of what you're saying?
well, right now, I don't know, when we set the computer program up, once we go live, we can adjust it also. Like, say if we set it out for $1 an hour now, we can either change it to free or change it to $2 or whatever council deems. But I'll get more information on what some of the other communities are doing, just to let people know.
So I go to the library quite often, but the library one is not working yet. They're not working yet, right?
No, they haven't been commissioned. We're going to commission them all at the same time, the high school one and the other. And we might need somebody to test the operation of them, Mayor Bell. So
I hope we do a big green ribbon cutting and all that too, like connect to a greener life, right? So,
that's right. Yeah.
okay, that's great. Anything else before we move on to the next item on the agenda? Okay, so number 9 item on the agenda is bylaws, but I don't believe we have any bylaw conversation for tonight. So now the COVID vaccine policy. So we are not just necessarily just approving the policy that we talked about in a lot of detail next time, but we are considering as well the request from the minister to align our policy with the provincial policy. So Dan, I'll let you just sort of summarize and present the questions we need to discuss right now.
Okay, well, this is basically from the last council meeting where we talked about the workplace safety policy, and that we want to have a safe work environment. We don't want to see anybody unduly harmed by our policy or by COVID. So we talked about who this would potentially impact, the policy: council members, staff, contractors, volunteers, and of course the fire department. So what we talked about in our policy, persons fully vaccinated with both doses, they'd be exempt from the testing requirements that other people will have in this policy. However, if we have an outbreak or exposures in the workplace, testing requirements may be temporarily modified to include those who are fully vaccinated. For example, if we had something going on, we would ask employees to get voluntarily tested. And it is great now that we do have some of the kits in the municipality to do the rapid testing. And the masking will follow the provincial requirements. What we talked about for mandatory position was that contractors and recreation staff at the Civic Center must be fully vaccinated, and all new fire department members, all new staff or fire department members must be fully vaccinated. And then we talked about people not fully vaccinated, but the testing requirements. It would have to be done 2 times per week for the rapid test, and once per month for the PCR test. And then sort of the conditions why, if they have 2 or more symptoms, what employees would need to do. And then we talked about masking, sort of back to where we're all wearing masks in workplace at all times in all common areas. People with medical exceptions would not be required. And any volunteers of the Perth Village should also follow those requirements. And enforcement, when we talked about contractors, they wouldn't be allowed to work in municipal facilities, and staff be subject to disciplinary process up to and including dismissal. I think what the term the province is using now for some of that is they're putting people on furlough, that if they don't meet the vaccination requirement, they're just put on leave without pay. So that was the gist of it from the policy from council. And of course, as we talked about, the province is sort of asking now that we align with their policies. Although I was a bit disappointed that when they sent the letter out, they didn't include what their policies are. So I don't know what that I don't know what that means. I have an idea, but I just don't know what. I was sort of hoping that maybe Councillor Green might have some insight on that, where he works for the province.
And conveniently, Councillor Green has his hand up, so we will hand him the floor.
Thank you. Yeah, they've changed it since we met. It's my understanding now that it's mandatory vaccination by November 19th, I think it is. I don't necessarily think maybe we change this until we see that actually roll out. And if that's what it is, then we'll discuss whether or not we need to change our stance after that. But you know, they've changed their mind on several things that they've said along the way, and I think we're probably best to wait and see. This is the current standard right now, so we probably should stay with that. I have a couple other questions too as we're going through, if that's all right.
Go ahead.
So on the second page of it, Dan, under persons not fully vaccinated, you just have Justine's name. I think you should probably put, if it's under a policy written up, it probably should just have her position. I think you put it elsewhere, you put assistant CAO, so it probably should just say that as well.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering too, I know that the province has since backed off on their monthly PCR testing requirement part of it. So, and I know we still have that in there. I don't know if because they've backed off on that, and maybe somebody else can answer this question, but if I call up to get a PCR test not having symptoms, can I get a PCR test? So if we're requiring a PCR test once a month and people aren't able to get one, I don't know if, you know, what we're going to do about that. I don't believe that you can. I think they were probably, at the time when we wrote that, the province was requiring that, so it was probably going to be put in place, but I don't know if you can. And then then you want me to keep going, or we can stop us? Okay. Then if you go down to the masking section, the next one, I'm just wondering, when we said employees who provide a certificate of medical exemption to the vaccine will not be required to wear a mask, but I think we should require, I think you should say employees who provide a certificate of medical exemption to a mask shouldn't be required to wear a mask. But I think that even if they have a medical exemption to the vaccine, then they should follow the same rules as those of us who are vaccinated have to follow, right? If I'm double vaxxed, I still have to wear a mask. I think it's important that unless they show a medical exemption to wearing a mask, that they should wear a mask, whether they're exempted from a shot or not. You understand what I'm saying? And I think, yep, those are the 3 points that I had.
Thank you for that.
The PCR test, I know that so far the people that have need to get them have been able to get them.
Okay.
I believe that the airport, that there's going to be, in terms of travel, I'm just not sure about where for sure, but it might be that people will have to go get the PCR test at their own expense and even pay for it, I suppose. Like if the government was refusing or wouldn't give people a date for their PCR. I guess the people who are in this boat, if they're planning to get their PCR test once a month, they better make their appointment appropriately in advance so that they can get it and not be, put off down the road. But would we be requiring people to arrange a private test? Like if somebody was going to be traveling to Jamaica or something like that, would, because it says right in this policy that there's no cost for the PCR, but if there is a cost, if things change, the cost is still to be borne by the employee, right? Not by the municipality.
Yes, and I would assume too with the province that if they're switching to mandatory vaccines, the monthly testing requirement will be dropped naturally anyways.
But it might be dropped by them, but it wouldn't be dropped by us
Right.
unless we changed our policy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I agree with what Jason said there about the masking, that people have to wear a mask if we're telling our employees mask, vaccinated or not to wear a mask, that includes people with a medical exemption. Unless somebody got the very extraordinary thing of a medical exemption to masking, which perhaps exists, but is not readily available anyways. Sheldon, I see your hand is up. Let's hear from you.
Thanks. And I would assume, well, it's a question, I guess, if the employee is furloughed or on leave without pay, are they still beholden to the policy? Do they still have to get monthly tests, or is it just, it's null and void?
Well, it's a good question. I believe that the way they're treating it is once people leave work for not being vaxxed, then upon returning, they would either have to, I'm assuming, two things. One, prove that they're vaccinated, or at the very least, if they've met the testing requirements. Again, not having seen the policy they're referring to, it's kind of hard on our end.
Yeah, I think once they're off, they're off. You're not paying them, so you don't have a really stick to hold over their head to force them to do anything. So I know for students at schools, when they're off and they have to come back, they have to have 2 negative tests and all that kind of stuff. So it would be just kind of that idea, like you said, Dan, that if they're coming back, that they would either have to show that they're going to follow the policy or the proof of vaccination. I guess I did have one more thing too, if that's all right, while I'm talking. Under masking again, where it had all municipal employees will be required to wear their masks in the workplace at all times, except when they're working alone. I think we should also add perhaps, and while eating. I know that was the bone of contention amongst teachers, that if they're sitting and eating or drinking, just like they are in a restaurant, that they should be able to remove their mask to do so.
That seems like a reasonable thing, except I guess there's not a lot of eating happening in class with the cupcakes and cups of coffee. Sheila, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I agree with Jason. I wouldn't like to see us change the policy that we had written until I see the government actually carry through on their change, because it could change drastically within a week or two, and we don't want to be causing undue concern to our employees when it may not be happening at all. So I think at this time, we would, if employees ask about it, we'll follow the protocol that we have had now. If the government changes theirs, and we may consider changing ours, but leave it at that. As far as those PCR tests, it is difficult to get them, and if you get them at an airport, you're talking about $300 and $500. Yeah, they're not cheap at an airport. So the cheapest you get them usually is about $150 if you go to one of the clinics. So they're not cheap tests.
I think we did spend a fair bit of time discussing this policy last meeting, and we did have the option to do a stricter policy, which is what the province is requesting, but we chose, for legal reasons and for various reasons, to develop this policy. So I think it's not a bad approach to hang in there with the policy that we've talked about. We might not have new information, like we don't really know more about anything that would change the policy exactly, except that we have the request from the government, and the government is prone to sometimes walking back on some of the directives and then clarifying over a bit of time. Does anybody else want to add to this discussion about whether to adopt the province's recommendation, which we don't actually have in front of us, or to proceed with the one that we worked on with some of the changes that Jason mentioned? Well, with all of the changes Jason mentioned. Okay, so then if it seems that it would be the desire of this council to proceed with this policy, I think I would take someone to make the motion that we approve the policy with the changes that Jason specified.
Where are we sitting on the PCR test? Are we Right now, the government isn't requiring it. Are we requiring it? What are we doing there?
Well,
We are requiring it the way it's written.
and we can adjust.
And we've only had, out of all the personnel and volunteers impacted by this, I believe we only have 2 that are in the process of getting vaccinated right now. So this just applies to, I guess, 2 individuals right now.
We can revisit this definitely if the government, like I did hear that in some province today, a policy about COVID is being applied to municipalities as well. I don't remember what the news story was, but I kind of jumped when I heard that, wondering how the province, whatever province it was, had the jurisdiction to tell a municipality how to handle their staff. Anyways, we can, I mean, we are, this whole pandemic, we're figuring it out as we go. And so we can certainly revisit this, but this is what we've taken some care to work out. So Dan, you have the little changes that Jason had mentioned.
Yeah,
So
I'll
again, I'm going to ask for anybody who wants to make the motion that we approve this workplace safety policy for COVID. Thank you, Jason. And Cindy, is that a seconding that you're doing? Yeah. Thank you. Okay, moved by Jason, seconded by Cindy. Any further discussion before we have the vote? Okay, so we have a motion to approve the workplace safety policy to do with vaccinations, et cetera, and COVID. Moved by Jason, seconded by Cindy. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Good. And certainly if we get significant new information or new direction, we will take another look at that. But for our employees and for, well, mainly for our employees, we don't want to be changing our policy repeatedly. This is, you know, it's serious business. Okay, so now I see we have a fun item on the agenda here, 11A, new business, Halloween. So what are you going to tell us about Halloween, Dan, or is it just going to be what I think it is?
Well, I guess we've been getting some inquiries about Halloween activities in the community this year, and some communities are coming up with different ways to do it. I haven't heard of any community canceling Halloween like they talked about last year. So I didn't know if this was on council's radar, or if there's any comments. Like typically from a staff perspective, our policy is whatever the provincial mandate is at the time, is how we've looked at it. But I didn't know if council wanted to do anything on it. We had a request from the graduation class, would like to do a haunted trail walk on the trail behind the office here. And I guess our response has been, look, if you guys want to do it and have a COVID plan that meets all the current government or the government requirements of the day, you know, then as far as from a staff perspective, we're okay that you do it, just as long as you're meeting all the requirements. And the same thing with the market that's going on at Veterans Field, the same thing there, that as long as groups want to do that. But I do know of some other places. I think Centerville's doing a drive-through trick-or-treat thing this year. So there's some communities doing something with a little bit of a twist on it. So I didn't know if council had any ambition or anything like that for that or not. So I just thought I'd throw that out there for discussion.
I did take a look to see what we did last year, like what we communicated last year. And what we said was, we are just supporting and following everything that the Department of Public Health was saying to do. And we laid out very plainly all their guidelines and suggestions, and just said, have fun and be safe, all that sort of thing. And I remember, I felt like the reaction from the community was that people were very pleased with that approach, that we weren't adding any rules. I do believe sometimes, I think it's great that grad class might be doing something, and sometimes one of the churches might do a trunk or treat type thing. I'll just invite counselors who has an opinion from the council on this question.
I would echo what you just said.
Thank you. Okay, so Dan, we're not going to ask you to host a party. We're just going to say, it looks like council is again wanting to just support whatever public health puts out. It wasn't until the very end of October, I think, that we knew what exactly we were able to do because, well, we were just new with pandemicing last year at this time. So, but we can be telling people who inquire that we're not doing anything in addition to what public health will be saying. But for all we know, if we're still in a circuit breaker situation, there might be some stricter rules than there were last year. Okay, if nothing further from any councilors, 11B is the 2022 budget update. Over to Dan.
Yeah, so I guess we've started to receive some of the numbers from the province. People received, I guess, their tax notices in the mail a couple of weeks ago, or their assessment notices, I should say. We started to receive the total tax base for the community, which was nice. It was up 4.1%, I believe, over the year before, and a lot of that's from new construction. And then just increased market value of properties. Some communities have seen, from what I'm told, 15 to 20% increase in assessment, just due to the huge market increases. From my understanding is that the urban centers, especially in the southern part of the province, receive the highest. And then as you move northern in the province, the increases sort of decline. So in the northern New Brunswick, a lot of communities still had flat assessment increases, where in the middle of the province, it was less than the urban centers in the southern part of the province. So it was good for us. We did receive an increase. Our tax rate or tax base has sort of fluctuated over the years, along with the unconditional grant that goes along with it. That sort of goes up and down and things. So some years we've had positive news and a lot of years bad news. So it was nice to see this year the assessment go up, not especially with the new construction component of it, which was nice. The people having to pay more on their existing homes is not so nice for the property owners, of course, but other than that, and we're still waiting on some of the finalized things from the government, of course, to do the budget. Just a reminder to council that we have to, or I guess required or asked to finalize our budget by the end of November. So hopefully we'll be on track for that. We'll have a budget review with the information we have at the time at our first council meeting in November, and we'll finish it up for the end of November.
Thank you for that. Any comments or questions from councilors? Yeah, it's great to see new construction, and that's the way we want to see our value increasing from new construction. Okay, next thing is public works position 11C.
Yeah, I guess we have an employee that's going to be out on prolonged I guess leave from the municipality. Is no longer, I guess, on our payroll as of now. So I guess we'd like to advertise for that position. Just want to let council know that there's going to be a job ad going out for that. So it's a position in Public Works. If anyone knows of anyone that might be a great equipment operator and could do all the things that we normally do, help out with the garbage collection, snow removal, water and sewer, those kind of things, we'll have a job ad out this week, and we'll close it in, sometime in November, and we'll need I guess a couple or three councilors for a hiring committee at some point.
Okay, that's good. So is that going to be built then as a permanent full-time job, or is it a leave?
Well, I think right now we will advertise it, I would think, as a permanent position, because depending on what council does, for example, with the garbage collection, that if we want to expand that service, and with the proposed changes to the size of the municipality, we're certainly going to need on the public works side some additional help also. So.
Comments or questions from counselors? Okay, so then I believe we've come to the end of our regular agenda. We need to have a motion now to go in camera to discuss a legal issue. Would we have someone to make that motion? I see Sheila. And a seconder, Cindy, thank you. Okay, the motion is to go into a closed session, into in-camera session to discuss a legal issue. Moved by Sheila, seconded by Cindy. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, so the recording will stop. And then we'll finish the meeting after.